Shirley here with Sirius Tellus Moon, and the moon releases from the trine to Pluto, slowly approaching Aldebaran. Now, Venus 28 degrees Gemini, sextiling Chiron and Mars. And here is the eureka I had about this. Some of the struggles, Venus hour, yeah. Some of the struggles when addressing, let's say, orgasmic birthing and so on and so forth, as life-changing, addressing the core issues of like infants being raped and so on and so forth. Some of the issues that I found women to have with that, and I used to get furious at women. I used to get furious at women because they were basically adopting the rapey mindset and re-traumatizing. And while it still angers, I had no idea that they were simply taking a look at their old selves before they adapted to somewhat patriarchal society. And getting out of these notions that it forces them to both it flips in the judgment card, in the sense that now they have to judge themselves on judging themselves for thinking that they were a slut, not a lady, or cheap, or whatever they call it, when in many cases they were simply the infant that was raped. And then at the same time flip the judgment card to when they enable these perceptions and mock at women that address them being raped as infant, even in invisible ways, which is kind of like yin 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 yin. and then kind of like their weird reactions within themselves are the projection. Now, people always say, yeah, people project what they think about themselves. Not always the case. People that were actually raped, they don't project the rapist on the rapist. And I can say one of the key factors is understanding where are the parts in, let's say, when people try to create a trauma bond. It's not like people always consciously try to create a trauma bond. It's addressing like what are the things that align with something that is secure attachment and relaxed arousal and honoring the self, and kind of like supporting them while setting the boundary to the things that don't. Now, the more consciously malevolent the other plan was, the more 9/11 on 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 the entire ecosystem. It's the deep state 9/11 and on itself type of thing. It's the rights that the children do that are dissociated from 9/11 and all these things. Shout out to Anya Wake that explained that. But this is also where we're stripped off the dumbfuckery. We can actually see, okay, for example, I don't know, where are the places where I have been kind of like talking about sexuality, or I don't know, singing something, and it's kind of like arguing because of the dealing with literally something I was extremely helpless about, which was rape. And how all the categories fall. So I see this Venus in Gemini sextiling Mars in Chiron as, and no one is exempt, all of us getting out of the residues of, even if we're BIPOC, the single white lady, not the single white lady, the how they call this, another stereotype, um, the um, the feminine, the skinny white woman, the skinny one, the skinny white woman, and this. People be like, I'm not even skinny. Or not even white. I don't know. But this is. So, um, but this is something that can definitely 9/11 after, after the Epstein dossiers. It's like it's not good for sensual pleasure. It's not good for birthing. It's not good for launching projects. It's not good for business. It's just not good. It's just, it is so. And I think the humor that the Gemini provides here with Mercury approaching Sedna, but also Uranus, we can take a look at things from a completely way more profound perspective. Um, in the sense that the superficial terms, and Maga is known for the superficial terms of trying to turn rape into something that was a romantic. I made a satire about that, by the way, about the fact that you cannot even, that being vulnerable, you cannot even receive the support, so you have to pretend that you are the crazy romantic partner, so that there was, it was literally part of the satire. Um, it's kind of like if I said they did that and they did that and they did that, nobody would believe me anyway. But why not play on that romantic thing? Like, okay, that thing is missing. That thing is missing. Here is the reason that that is missing. And that was 2 milliseconds before the Me Too. Um, and well, the topic at hand was incredibly terrible. It was both trafficking and the fact that that was what diplomacy and intelligence was built on. That's the Epstein dossiers. Um, tree. So this is something that leaves people or leaves women, by the way, regardless of their origin, to only being able to adopt in what people call the skinny white woman, that has to adopt the categories of the patriarchy to be seen as a lady. Where what about her own life? What about her birthing experience? What about now? Of course, it's painful because it shifts in the thing is kind of like not only women were trying to be somehow acceptable in society, they were judging themselves on behaviors that are basically the result of a raped infant. And and then they're confronted with something that is from the infanthood, while the shifting, while the judging is kind of like flips from judging oneself for basically trauma responses to being a raped infant in patriarchal society, and adopting the most adaptive behavior that would still leave, let's say, some sort of residues of women's rights, and then flipping the coin to say, oh, wait a second, now it's called skinny white lady. And what women were expected to, which is to hate on each other for being a woman, is being considered um, basically a skinny white woman. And this is where the behaviors that were kind of like a trauma response and suddenly are addressed authentically, it's kind of like, hey, that was the raped infant. That was the process of saying no to what I don't want and not lying to myself if something was the approximate of what I do want, but then something's missing, and kind of like building from there, and focusing on my own alignment rather than on whether I don't know whether somebody would stay or not, or whether it will be more, whether it is, or what even is it. If we're talking about the astral, sometimes people don't know what even is it, and this is where um, let's say think about that versus somebody who is, let's say, Ghislaine Maxwell, or even in between. And this is where the Epstein dossiers collapsed a lot more, fortunately. And it's also, I guess, important that we are going to be compassionate with ourselves around the process of it not being able to, like, not being able to play the skinny white woman anymore without that being called out. Um, for example, today I don't have to do a satire about how unsatisfying is a life with a person that tries to traffic me in academia, or or what is missing from me to be able to reconnect with my orgasmic self, or where am I, or even authentically, where am I going from what could have been misplaced arousal from the trauma and the shock to actually relaxed arousal, which is the sex that I do want. I remember there was the time where all the women were celebrating the gray fantasies, and I was like, I felt like the alien in the bunch, the underdog. Okay, later, this I'm recording later. Later, I'm recording. I will address that. Um, Mommy, I will address that. Thank you. Yeah. Um, More things. Neptune star of dissociation is sextiling Uranus Sedna. Um, and um, and here is where we actually have to be compassionate with ourselves. Also, when we talk about these really gruesome things to do with the dissociation that happen in our day-to-day life, while the fact that, hey, those folks that rape children out there are not more sovereign. Um, Venus sextile Chiron next to Aries, which also sextiles kind of like the Ketu going through Magha, is building up a remediation and an understanding that no, it's not a phase, and the cultural norms in society have shifted. People will no longer um, agree to be the skinny white lady anymore. And they will no longer agree to be judged according to the standards of, hey, you've not been a skinny white lady enough. Um, the core issues are the core. Now, there are many things that were foundational, and a lot of us have built various things on that basis that collapses. Some people build degrees, some people build relationships, some people build families, some people build businesses, and they have made the arrangement and the adaptation that they have to sort the wheat from the chaff, and it happens through a crisis. Now, this Venus at the end of Gemini bears a point of anchoring point to the remediation of that crisis. hey, if you talk about monogamy, you can't be doing human trafficking affiliated business. That is trading and profiting off of the raped infants. If you talk about the non-monogamy, you have to show that you're not another cult, but this time using non-monogamy as a trafficking model rather than an authentic framework of communication in relationships that addresses erotic growth and the fact that we are just growing, and many of us are just growing to know our erotic and non-erotic self, our commitment style, what we like and don't like, and so on and so forth. Those patriarch Christian norms of judgment that never were fitting for orgasmic birthing, life creation, or saying no to, or being, let's say, child free. Um, they, this is where, oh, wait a second, letting go of those categories also means that each and every sexual encounter has to be willingly consensual, which means that we can't just expect to be sexually loyal to one another when it's not. And here is the thing, the more this open discussion there is about these things, the more understanding and openness that there can be something different, the easiest it is to maintain a good communication where whether people are monogamous or not, they will be able to address that. Whereas the more skinny white lady model and the patriarchal model and the any success is forcing to rubbing shoulder with Epstein or Sears model, the less people can actually talk about their intimate relations in a way that is authentic. And that breeds something that is not even cheating, but downright susceptibility to trafficking. And for people that recover from anything that looks like trauma bond, anything that looks like mispriced arousal is already a trigger. So it really has to be secure attachment style, honoring erotic and non-erotic, relaxed arousal based intimacy, something that supports orgasmic birthing for people to even be able to discern it from literally Epstein dossiers. Okay, we really have, with Ketu Magha, we're saying goodbye to way more than the Epstein dossiers being hidden. The use of dark occult that a lot of us could not talk about in the Me Too. And had no access to litigation. We did not even have a name for it. I was in academia. Nobody, astrology was considered pseudoscience. I think I know only Dr. Angela Puka and Dr. Sledge that talk about the occult from the perspective of being academic, and one of them was fired. So, and then when they do delve into that, we see mainly the control the world occult and the discernment that people like Gigi Young are talking about. I'm tending to it. Are talking about is something that we already don't see.